I'm 56 years old, and for the first time in my life, I learned what it feels like to be treated like a stranger by the child I raised. I drove 15 exhausting hours across 3 states, fueled by cold coffee and excitement, imagining the moment I would hold my first grandson. But the moment I reached the hospital doors, everything inside me shattered. My son, Aiden, stood there, rigid, distant, almost nervous, like he wasn't sure if he should look me in the eye. When he finally spoke, his voice felt like ice. "Mom, what are you doing here? Emma said she doesn't want you around." That sentence cut deeper than anything I had survived in this life. I didn't yell, I didn't beg, I simply turned around and walked away, carrying a heartbreak heavier than the drive itself. But 4 days later, my phone rang. The hospital. A bill, $10,300 under my name. And in that moment, I realized something. They didn't just push me away, they used me. And now they are about to learn what happens when a mother they tried to erase refuses to be silent. My name is Lena Moore, and I'm 56 years old. After a long, exhausting 15-hour drive, my heart was dancing with hope. I imagined holding my first grandson, feeling his tiny heartbeat, and celebrating the moment I had waited years for. Every mile I drove brought me closer to what I believed would be one of the happiest days of my life. But the moment I stepped out of my car and walked toward the hospital entrance, something felt wrong. It wasn't the cold air or the sterile smell of the building. It was the sight of my son, Aiden, standing stiffly by the door, not excited, not smiling, but tense and uncertain. And in that instant, I sensed that something was about to break inside me. As I walked toward Aiden, his expression didn't soften. He didn't open his arms. He didn't look relieved that I had arrived safely. Instead, he kept glancing over his shoulder as if he wished someone else would handle this moment for him. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a coldness I had never heard from him before. It wasn't anger. It was discomfort, hesitation, almost guilt. "Mom," he said quietly, barely meeting my eyes, "we need to talk." My heart tightened instantly. This wasn't how a son welcomes his mother to his child's birth. His tone felt like a warning, and suddenly my excitement turned into dread. Aiden took a deep breath, and his next words struck me farther than any blow could. "Emma said she doesn't want you around." The sentence echoed in my mind, looping painfully. His wife, the woman I tried to welcome into my family, didn't want me near my own grandchild. I searched Aiden's face for resistance, for hesitation, for anything that showed he disagreed, but all I saw was fear and obedience. It became painfully clear that he wasn't telling me his choice, he was carrying out hers. And in that moment, the joy I had brought with me crumbled into dust. Inside the hospital, I could hear distant chattering, laughter, tiny baby cries, sounds that should have welcomed me. Instead, I wasn't even allowed to step through the doors. I looked past Aiden into the bright hallway where nurses rushed by and families hugged each other. It was a hallway I imagined walking proudly through, excited to meet my grandson. But now it felt like a world I was forbidden to enter. Without another word, I stepped back. Aiden didn't stop me. He didn't chase me. He didn't even say goodbye. I turned around and walked away, my footsteps hollow against the floor, knowing I no longer belonged in that moment. The drive home felt twice as long as the trip to the hospital. Every mile replayed Aiden's voice in my mind. The road blurred behind tears I kept trying to blink away. My hands gripped the steering wheel, not because of exhaustion, but because I felt my world slipping from my fingers. I kept asking myself what went wrong, what mistake I had made as a mother. Was I too strict, too soft, not enough? I had imagined returning home with pictures, stories, and joy. Instead, I returned with silence and a wound deeper than I could describe. My heart felt heavier than the entire 15-hour journey. When I walked into my house, the quiet was overwhelming. No congratulatory messages, no calls, not even a simple update from Aiden. It felt like I had been erased from an event I had every right to be part of. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank wall, feeling more alone than I had in years. Every mother dreams of meeting her grandchild, of sharing that first moment. Instead, I had been pushed out without explanation, without compassion. The silence inside my home mirrored the silence from my son, and that silence hurt more than words ever could. It wasn't until the middle of the night that my emotions finally broke free. I sat on the floor, hugging my knees, and cried harder than I had since Aiden was a child. I hadn't just lost access to a moment. I felt like I had lost my place in my son's life. The betrayal wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, deliberate, and cold, and that made it worse. I realized that I was mourning something deeper than rejection. I was mourning the mother-son bond I thought was unbreakable, and deep down, I sensed this wasn't the end of the hurt. It was only the beginning. 4 days after the heartbreaking incident at the hospital, Lena was trying her best to distract herself, though nothing truly eased the ache in her chest. She sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold in her hands when her phone suddenly buzzed. The screen showed an unfamiliar number, but the location made her heart skip. It was the hospital city. Her breath caught. For a moment, she wondered if something had gone wrong with the baby or if Aiden was finally reaching out. A small spark of hope flickered inside her. But when she answered the call and heard the formal tone of a hospital representative, that flicker dimmed instantly. Something wasn't right, and deep down she sensed this call wasn't going to bring comfort. It was going to bring answers she wasn't prepared for. The woman on the phone introduced herself from the hospital's billing department and immediately began verifying Lena's full name, address, and date of birth. Her voice was polite but businesslike, giving no hint of the storm to come. Then she delivered the blow. "We're calling to discuss the outstanding delivery bill for your daughter-in-law, totaling $10,300. How would you like to take care of the payment?" For a moment, Lena froze, unable to process the words. "Excuse me?" she whispered, thinking she must have misheard. But no, the representative repeated it, slower this time. The amount, the expectation, the assumption that she was the payer. Her body went cold. She had been pushed away from the birth, yet somehow she was responsible for the bill. It made no sense unless someone wanted it that way. Trying to steady her voice, Lena asked how her name became tied to the bill. The representative calmly explained that during Emma's admissions process, the financial responsibility form listed Lena Moore as the person designated to cover all delivery-related expenses. Lena felt her mouth go dry. She had never been asked, never been informed, never signed anything. Yet here she was, legally on the hook for more than $10,000. As the representative continued, it became clear that this wasn't a clerical error. Someone had intentionally put her name down. Her heart sank even deeper. She had been shut out emotionally, excluded physically, but used financially. The betrayal was no longer subtle. It had a signature, and she knew exactly whose handwriting she expected to find on that form. While Lana tried to gather information, the call was briefly transferred to another department. A nurse picked up, cheerful, chatty, clearly unaware of the tension. She casually mentioned, "Oh yes, your son told us you wanted to help with the delivery cost. He said you insisted on paying as your gift to them." Lana felt her stomach twist painfully. Insisted? She hadn't even been allowed to step inside the building. That lie wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate manipulation. The nurse continued talking, not realizing the damage her words were causing. But for Lina, everything suddenly aligned. Aiden and Emma hadn't just excluded her. They'd planned to use her. They blocked her from the birth, then quietly put the bill on her shoulders. A cruel, calculated betrayal she never expected from her own child. Icy clarity washed over Lina as the truth formed in her mind. Aiden had lied. Not out of confusion, not by mistake, but intentionally. He and Emma had set this up. They didn't want her presence at the birth, but they wanted her money. Her hands trembled as she held the phone, stunned by the depth of their manipulation. Aiden had always been kind, thoughtful, and so good-hearted. At least she believed so. But now she wondered how long this behavior had been growing beneath the surface. Has Emma influenced him, or had he changed long before she noticed? What hurt the most wasn't the bill. It wasn't even the lie. It was the realization her son saw her as nothing more than a financial tool, not a mother. When the call finally ended, Lina sat motionless, her tea completely cold, her thoughts racing. Why would Aiden do this? Why push her away only to drag her name into a financial mess? Did Emma pressure him, or had he willingly chosen convenience over honesty? Her mind spiraled with questions she never imagined she would ask about her own child. She remembered the days she worked double shifts to raise him alone, the nights she comforted him through fevers, the sacrifices no one ever knew. And now the same child had betrayed her trust so deeply. She felt anger rise, mixed with heartbreak, confusion, and a strange sense of awakening. Whatever the reason behind their actions, one truth became clear. This wasn't just a family misunderstanding, it was a manipulation she could no longer overlook. After hours of pacing the house and replaying the conversation, Lina finally made her choice. She would not pay a single dollar, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And she was done staying silent. Being quiet had cost her grief, humiliation, and now nearly $11,000. She realized the only way to protect herself was to confront this head-on. She decided she would request every document, every signature, every detail, and once she had proof of what they had done, she would hold them accountable, legally if necessary. For the first time in days, a sense of strength returned to her chest. They wanted to treat her like she didn't matter, but now they were about to find out exactly who they were dealing with. The next morning, Lena took a deep breath and called the hospital back with a tone far steadier than she felt. She formally requested copies of every document that had her name on it, admission forms, billing paperwork, signatures, everything. The staff member on the phone hesitated for a moment, surprised by the firmness in her voice, but agreed to email the scanned files within the hour. As she waited, Lena's heart pounded. Part of her hoped it was all a misunderstanding, that maybe the hospital had made an error. But deep down, she feared the truth would be far uglier. When the email finally arrived, she opened the attached PDF with shaking hands, bracing herself for what she might find. She knew this would be the moment everything changed. When Lina zoomed in on the signature line, her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't her signature, not even close. Her name was written in a dramatic, looping handwriting she recognized immediately. Emma's! She had seen that exact handwriting on Christmas cards, grocery notes, and baby shower invitations. Rage and disbelief washed through her. Emma hadn't just put her name down, she had forged her signature. Lina stared at the screen, her heart pounding as betrayal settled like a weight in her chest. This wasn't an accident or misunderstanding. It was a calculated act of fraud, a deliberate attempt to trap her financially. And what hurt even more was knowing Aiden must have known, because Emma wouldn't dare do this alone. Determined to confirm every detail, Lina called the hospital again and asked to speak with the billing supervisor. After a brief wait, a calm, professional voice came on the line. Lena explained the forged signature, and the supervisor sounded troubled. After checking the file, the supervisor quietly added, "Ma'am, the form was handed to us by your son. He personally delivered it to the desk." The words hit Lena like a punch. Aiden hadn't just allowed this, he had been part of it. He stood outside the hospital telling her to leave, all while carrying paperwork that forced her to pay for the birth she wasn't allowed to attend. The betrayal deepened, and her resolve hardened. The supervisor continued reviewing the file and mentioned something even more disturbing. The hospital had tried billing Aiden and Emma's insurance, but the claim was denied. The reason stunned Lena. Emma had listed Lena as a restricted visitor, claiming she was someone who caused emotional distress, which triggered a policy rule preventing the insurance from covering certain costs. Because Lena was restricted, the system designated her, the listed guarantor, as financially responsible. It was a perfect trap. They banned her from the birth, then made her pay for it. Lena felt something inside her shift. This wasn't just manipulation, it was exploitation, and she finally understood the full extent of what they had done. That afternoon, Lena's phone rang again. This time, it was Aiden. His tone was cheerful, almost casual, like nothing unusual had happened. "Hey, Mom," he said, as if he hadn't shattered her heart days earlier. "Just wanted to check in. The baby's doing great." Lena nearly dropped the phone. How could he talk to her like everything was fine, like he hadn't lied to the hospital, forged her responsibility, and walked away from her in the cold hallway? She felt a deep ache in her chest, but she forced her voice to remain calm. He was calling for a reason, she thought, and she was going to find out exactly what that reason was. Lena made a decision at that moment. She wouldn't mention the bill. Not yet. She wanted to hear what Aiden would say if he thought she knew nothing, so she kept her tone light, almost detached, and let him ramble. He talked about the baby, about sleepless nights, about how tired they were, all the normal things new parents say. But the longer he talked, the more obvious it became that he was stalling. His voice wavered when he paused. He was building up to something, circling around it nervously. Lena stayed silent, speaking only when necessary. She felt like a detective listening to a suspect talk himself into a corner. She knew the truth would slip out soon. Finally, after several minutes of awkward small talk, Aiden hesitated and cleared his throat. That was the moment everything cracked. "So Emma said you'd help with the expenses," he said lightly, like he was talking about borrowing a cup of sugar, not thousands of dollars. Lena felt the words slice through her. There it was. The lie was spoken out loud. He didn't know she already knew everything. He didn't know she had the forged document, the supervisor's statement, the insurance notes. His casual tone only deepened the betrayal. In that instant, Lena realized he hadn't been manipulated, he was fully involved, and now she knew exactly how she would fight back. Lena waited until she was completely calm before calling Aiden back. When he answered, she didn't raise her voice or show a hint of anger. Instead, she asked one simple question, delivered with chilling clarity. "Why is my name on your hospital bill?" The silence that followed was thick, heavy, and telling. Aiden's breath caught, and for a moment he didn't speak at all. Lena could practically hear the gears turning in his head as he realized the truth. She knew. She wasn't confused. She wasn't guessing. She knew. Aiden finally stammered something unintelligible, trying to piece together an explanation, but Lena didn't fill the silence. She let the weight of her question hang in the air. This was the moment the lies would begin to unravel. Aiden's voice cracked immediately. "Mom, listen, it's complicated." His panic was unmistakable, and in the background Lena heard Emma whispering urgently, her tone sharp and frantic. Aiden tried again, tripping over his words. We thought maybe you'd just help out." Lena closed her eyes, listening to the chaos. Emma suddenly shouted from behind him, loud enough for Lena to hear clearly. "Tell her it was a misunderstanding. Tell her she agreed." Aiden repeated the words like a scared child, but his trembling voice told the truth. He wasn't protecting Emma. He was afraid. Afraid because the lie was bigger than he could control now. And Lena felt nothing but cold clarity. Their panic was confirmation of everything. Lena let Aiden ramble for a full minute before cutting in, her tone sharp but controlled. "I have the documents," she said. All of them, with the signature you claimed was mine. The call went dead silent. Not a sound, not even breathing. Then Aiden finally whispered, "Mom, listen." But she didn't let him continue. "Don't lie to me. I've seen Emma's handwriting for years. You didn't just put my name down. You forged it." In the background, Emma shrieked, "She can't prove anything." "Oh, I can," Lyanna replied calmly. "The hospital confirmed who handed in the paperwork." Aiden let out a soft, defeated sound. The truth was cornering them, and they had nowhere left to hide. Before Aiden could respond, Emma snatched the phone. Her voice was raw, furious, and dripping with entitlement. "You owe us!" she screamed. "You're his grandmother. You should pay. You weren't even there for his birth." Lyanna's stomach twisted, not from guilt, but from the disbelief at the shameless manipulation. Emma ranted nonstop, blaming Lyanna for the insurance denial, for not being present, for making things harder. "You're lucky we even let you be part of his life," Emma yelled. Lyanna almost laughed at the irony. They hadn't let her be part of anything. They banned her, lied about her, and then sent her the bill. Emma's meltdown revealed the truth. This wasn't desperation. It was entitlement, pure and calculated. When Emma finally ran out of breath, Lyanna spoke. Her voice was icy, steady, and powerful. "I owe you nothing," she said simply, "and forgery is a crime." The line went still. Lyanna continued, "You barred me from the hospital, then tried to stick me with the cost. You forged my signature, you lied to insurance, and you tried to manipulate me into paying for it." Emma sputtered, We didn't mean—" Lyanna didn't let her finish. "You meant every part of it, and now you will deal with the consequences." For the first time, Emma sounded genuinely afraid, and that fear told Lyanna she had finally taken back her power. Aiden came back on the line, his voice trembling. "Mom, please don't do anything. We can fix this." But Lyanna was done being manipulated. She replied with calm finality, "I've already forwarded everything to the hospital administration and to an attorney." Aiden gasped. Emma screamed. Lena remained unmoved. "You committed fraud using my name. That is not something I can ignore. This is no longer a family issue. It's a legal one." Aiden's voice cracked as he begged her to reconsider, but Lena felt none of the motherly softness she once did. They had crossed a line, one she couldn't pretend away. For the first time, they understood the gravity of what they had done. 2 days later, Lena received a call from the hospital's legal department. The forged documents had triggered an internal investigation. They were reviewing insurance fraud, falsified signatures, and misrepresentation of financial responsibility. The investigator informed Lena that both Aiden and Emma had been contacted and were already cooperating, which Lena knew meant panicking. The hospital assured her she was cleared of all responsibility. The bill was removed from her name and placed back where it belonged, on theirs. Meanwhile, Aiden sent 3 emotional voicemails begging her to talk. Emma sent none. The fallout had officially begun, and for the first time since the ordeal started, Lena felt peace. Hit like and subscribe, because the way everything unfolded after this, you won't believe it until you hear it. Lena wasn't expecting anyone when she heard the frantic knocking on her door, but the moment she opened it, she froze. Aiden stood there, eyes red, face pale, looking like his entire world had collapsed overnight. He wasn't angry, he wasn't defensive, he was terrified. He stepped inside and instantly broke down, crying harder than she had seen since he was a child. "Mom, I'm scared," he whispered, voice cracking. "The hospital, the investigation. I don't know what to do." Lena watched him, torn between heartbreak and a cold, undeniable truth. His choices had led him here. He begged her to tell him things would be okay, but all she could see was the son who allowed her to be humiliated. Once Aiden calmed enough to speak, the truth spilled out in broken pieces. He admitted that Emma had pushed the idea from the beginning. She insisted Lina owed her for past disagreements, claiming her presence during the birth would make things worse. Emma believed Lina should pay the bill as a way to make peace and prove loyalty. Aiden confessed he didn't fully understand the plan, but he signed the paperwork anyway, too afraid to fight Emma. Lina felt a deep ache in her chest, not just from the betrayal, but from realizing how weak her son had become. Every lie, every manipulated decision, every cruel word at the hospital entrance, it all finally made sense. But understanding didn't erase the harm. Lina took a deep breath and finally spoke the words she had swallowed for years. Aiden, love doesn't excuse betrayal. Her voice was steady, firm, almost painfully calm. She explained that supporting him didn't mean she had to tolerate being used, lied to, or pushed aside. Aiden tried to defend himself, but the more he spoke, the clearer it became that he was struggling to separate Emma's influence from his own choices. Lina didn't yell, she didn't blame, she simply set a boundary she should have set long ago. Until you learn to stand on your own, I cannot stand with you. Her words hit him harder than any punishment the hospital could give. For the first time, Lina chose herself. Within days, consequences hit hard. The hospital completed its investigation and removed Emma from Aiden's insurance account for providing falsified information. They assigned multiple financial penalties directly to her, and she was warned that continued dishonesty could lead to legal action. Emma fell apart. She sent angry texts to Lenina blaming her for ruining everything, but Lenina ignored every message. The truth was simple. Emma had built her marriage on manipulation, and now the lies were crumbling around her. Aiden later admitted Emma screamed nonstop, insisting Lenina should have protected them. But even he was beginning to see a pattern. Emma didn't want fairness, she wanted control, and now that control was slipping through her fingers. The breaking point came one late evening when Aiden packed a small suitcase for himself and the baby. He told Emma he needed space, needed clarity, needed to think without her constant pressure. Emma erupted, accusing him of betrayal, of choosing his mother over her, but Aiden didn't back down this time. He left the apartment and checked into a friend's guest room. For the first time in years, he saw Emma's behavior without excuses, without fear clouding his judgment. The emotional manipulation, the guilt traps, the constant demand for proof of loyalty. He finally recognized it for what it was. The separation wasn't permanent yet, but it was the first genuine step toward protecting himself and his child. When the hospital mailed the official report clearing her name, Lina felt an indescribable wave of relief. Every record showed she was not responsible for the bill, and all accusations were dismissed. She didn't have to pay a single cent, and her reputation remained untouched. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was emotional. She had stood her ground. She had refused to be guilted, pressured, or dragged into someone else's chaos. For the first time in decades, she felt a sense of dignity she had long been denied. Aiden called her later that night, quieter, humbler. He thanked her, not for fixing things, but for finally showing him what self-respect looked like. A few weeks later, Aiden arrived at Linnea's door again, but this time he wasn't crying. He held a small bundle wrapped in the blue blanket, her grandson. With trembling hands and a hopeful smile, he offered the baby to her. "Mom, I want you to meet him properly, on your terms." Linnea held her grandson for the first time, feeling his tiny heartbeat against her chest. The moment was peaceful, healing, and pure, not forced, not manipulated. For the first time in a long time, respect flowed in both directions. Aiden wasn't perfect, and the future was still uncertain, but this moment, This was the beginning of something better, a beginning built on honesty, boundaries, and finally, mutual respect.